We're on here tonight.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to give folks a chance to get over here because I know it was a false start with our new setup. Hopefully, folks can hear us. I'm going to get over into that chat room as opposed to the old one. And hopefully, this is working as it always has in the past. Jeff and Evan, you want to say something really quickly?
Brian, I can hear you from the YouTube.
You are really quiet, Evan.
Yeah, I can't hear you at all, Evan. Brian, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine, Jeff.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, there you are.
Okay.
Brian, you can hear all of this.
So I was saying some really interesting things before that nobody heard. I'm going to go ahead and say them again. So we'll start by just saying emergency podcast tonight. Did not anticipate doing this. We are doing it because there was some news. I think most of you heard the news, and that's why you're here. We will get into that very shortly. But there's other news as well, which is that Google and YouTube in all their glory has decided to shut down this Hangouts on Air that we use to do the podcast. And that ends August 1st. So we have very little time. We just learned about it and are now having to scramble to get a new setup for how we're going to do the pod. And the good news is we've actually got some really exciting stuff. We're going to be able to live stream across a bunch of different channels. We're going to be able to have different types of layouts and cool, snazzy things. It's going to be great. We even think you'll be able to hear us talk, although you were not able to hear that tonight, or you were hearing double. You were hearing echoes. We're going to figure that out. We had done some testing. Clearly, that did not work out so well. So we're going to have to figure that out again. We might even need to figure out, how to involve some of you in that testing to see if it's working properly. Anyway, so enough about that. But I do want to say that as part of this transition, Google Hangouts on Air was a wonderful free product that we were able to use. What we're using now and the ability to simulcast across a bunch of different accounts and do some of the newer stuff is not free. And that's just a reminder. We've always at Hawkblogger given away not only 100% of the proceeds from the charity, but I personally add on and try to match whatever we've raised, and we give all that to Ben's fund. As the show continues to grow and we add more people, we add folks like Cable Thanos, Josh, and Will, and Rain City Series, and some of the cool stuff they're doing, and some of the editing that they're having to do to these shows, some of the highlights that they're doing. We're going to do some more cool content. Costs are definitely going up, and we don't want the show to really be limited by my budget. So we'd really, really, really appreciate it if you guys could take 1 second, go over to patreon.com, patreon.com/Hawkblogger, sign up as a patron, $5 a month, super simple, really, really nice way for you guys to support. We are still absolutely going to give a lot of money to charity, hopefully it'll always be at least $10,000 a year. That's kind of my commitment. I hope that it's always $20,000 a year, but we're going to see. But we want to take some of the additional proceeds and invest that back into the show, bring you guys better content, better guests, better stuff altogether, and also find ways to make the Patreon experience even better, bring people together for live interaction, to really build that community. It's great to meet you guys all face to face. We also want to do things like add a new show, which we're going to do this year. We're going to do a post-game reaction show that Evan's going to drive immediately following or closely following after Seahawks games all year long. And again, all that comes with new costs, new work, new stuff. Would really, really appreciate you guys joining up there. As little as $5 a month. If you can do more, that's super helpful, and I would super appreciate it. If you're interested in being a sponsor for the show, you can do that as well. So that's on the Patreon side. If you can't do Patreon for some reason, you can't do the $5 a month, There's other ways you can help. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow the social accounts, Real Hawk Talk, at Evan Hill SEA, at Hawk Blogger, at Real Jeff Simmons, at Nathan E11. All that stuff's helpful. Subscribe at YouTube, subscribe on a podcast account, or even just give us a review. Take a few seconds and give us a review. 5-star reviews are great. If it's less than 5 stars, then maybe let us know what's wrong, and then we'll hopefully get you up to 5 stars. But again, I will drop the link here. Someone's asking on the chat for the link. And there it is, patreon.com/hawkblogger. We added about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 new people yesterday. And really excited to get a bunch more of you involved. I think our goal is to get a few hundred, 300-400 of you subscribed, and really build a thriving Seahawks community of people that take care of each other and really just have a really fun time enjoying the Seahawks all year. So, and for those that are saying they're broke, I get it. Again, you can leave a review, you can subscribe, you can even just click play and listen to a bunch of different podcast episodes. All that stuff helps the show grow. All right. With all that aside, let's talk for a second, fellas. Let me introduce the fellas. We've got Evan Hill at Evan Hill SEA on Twitter. How you doing, Evan?
I'm doing well. Can you hear me? Is my mic not too shallow? Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine.
Can you hear my beautiful I almost said my beautiful face. I have
we know that's how you feel.
I have a beautiful face. I also have a beautiful voice, and there will be many beautiful podcasts this season. I'm super excited.
Yes. All those things. I don't know about the face so much. I'll leave that to Alex. And then we've got Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter. How you doing, dude?
I'm all right, man. We had a good hour chat, me and Evan, before. We were getting ready to go. We're back on Google Hangouts. Hopefully you guys can see me and hear me again. It's the new computer, so
yeah, man, you're like crystal clear audio. It is so nice. I'm not waiting for you to like freeze and drop off. It's gonna be great.
I know. I talked to you guys for a full hour without any hiccups, so twice in a row. So let's see if we can get through another one.
All right. Well, so there's only a few things that would cause me to want to do an emergency pod the night before I fly out to Alaska to pull salmon out of the Kenai River. And one of them happened today. On our last podcast, fellas, we spent time talking about a bunch of the different position groups. And we specifically talked about the defensive line and that there were some concerns. I was pretty concerned. I felt like I was pretty thin. Jeff and Nathan were like, I think it might be a little bit better than you think. And there was basically 3 people on the podcast that were saying we should not sign Jarran Reed to a hefty extension. We should trade him. And one person who was saying that we should, and that, gosh, if we didn't have Jarran Reed, what would we have? He's the best player on that line. He's the guy that's got some proven production on that line. Ezekiel Ansah aside, he's an injury risk. We don't know what we're going to get there yet. And lo and behold, the Seahawks are without Jarran Reed. It has happened. News broke today that Jarran Reed will be suspended for the first 6 games of the season. And the suspension is due to violating the NFL's personal conduct policy, which in this case is related to, I believe, a domestic violence charge that happened back in 2017. So it dropped like a bomb. And I didn't get to read much about it because I was out on the links, basically destroying golf courses. But Evan, you're the one that texted me as soon as it happened. What have you learned so far when you were reading up on the news?
Yeah, so there was a really, really good Seattle Times report by Bob Condata that just came out literally a few hours ago, and I'm pulling it up just because I think it actually adds some new details to the already sort of, I don't want to say hush hush, but there were a lot of fans that were completely unaware of an incident that even occurred in 2017. It was very much kind of brushed under the rug. It didn't get a lot of national media attention. And we just kind of forgot about it, honestly, for a couple of years. But today there were some really interesting details added to the police report publicly, and I just wanted to read some of them just because I think it's really, really important. So let me just start from here. The report states that the police were called to Reed's Bellevue residence at 3:06 a.m. on April 27th, 2017, when a woman whose name is redacted but is identified as a 21-year-old black 5 foot 2 inches and 140 pounds female called to say she had just been dragged out of the residence by the owner of the house. Reed is identified as the homeowner. The report states Reed had been having a party that night and police had been called at 12:49 a.m. for a noise complaint, after which the residents said they would quiet the party down. The woman said in the report that she and Reed had been dating for about a month and Reed had paid to fly her in from Atlanta. They got into an argument, according to the report, when another woman identified as a stripper said at the party that she had been having a relationship with Reed. As the argument escalated, the report states the first woman claimed Reed grabbed her by the throat and pulled her into the connected bedroom and then released her. So outside of those new details, I don't, for any listeners that don't remember this, there was also some public-facing Instagram posts in 2017. I think it was either a month or two after this incident, broke to the public, of some images of this woman's injuries. Now, this woman's injuries in this Instagram account are not public today. Either I believe the posts were deleted and also the account was deleted. Don't know what's going on there, privacy reasons, I assume, but the images were graphic and they were not fun to look at. This is clearly a horrifying situation and a horrifying allegation. So I think suffice to say, I'm super, super disappointed, not just from hey, I'm disappointed in Jarran Reed. I'm super disappointed in looking solely at the football side of things. I'm super disappointed that he will be gone because this position group really, really needs him. And I want to be clear, that's not the priority here. Football's not the priority here. The well-being of the victim is the priority here. But both in the football worlds and also in the justice world here, it's really, really disappointing, especially for a player like Jarran Reed, who a lot of fans, and including myself in this, expected Jarran to be sort of taking on a leadership role into this team. Richard Sherman is gone. Cam Chancellor is gone. Earl Thomas is gone. Frank Clark is gone now, just traded to the Chiefs. There's not a ton of, big defensive leadership voices out there outside of Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright, especially when it came to this defensive line group. They were looking for somebody to step up into that leadership role. So I think I'm just profoundly disappointed.
Yeah, Jeff, there's a lot there. When we look at this position group, we'll get into that in a second, but talk for a little bit. One, just what was your reaction when you heard this news?
Like you described, Brian, it was similar to a bombshell. Honestly, I haven't been that surprised by any piece of Seahawks news, really, maybe since the Jimmy Graham trade and after the Super Bowl. I didn't see this coming from a mile away. We were talking last week about whether he should get $18 million a year or not. To hear that he's suspended 6 games completely caught me off guard. It put a complete wrench in my Monday, completely changed my whole day, honestly. And really, my response is I'm just left with a lot of questions. Evan did a very good job there detailing what he had learned, what Bob did, kind of stuff he had seen on Instagram in the past. And it's hard for me to comment on that side of things. So I'm going to stick to the football perspective. That's where I'm more comfortable. And really, I'm just left again with a lot of questions. Question 1, what took a suspension or an incident from 2017 to now? What led to a suspension in 2019? Number 2, why did Tyreek Hill get 0 games and Jarran Reed get 6? And I'm not trying to make light of anything that Jarran Reed did or anything that he allegedly did, but how does the NFL come up with these continuous arbitrary rules where there's no process, and how do things keep getting made up as they go along? Where is there's no line in the kind of demarcation. There's no real consistency in any means. And it's happened to so many other teams. There was the Sean Payton stuff years ago. There's been stuff with Zeke Elliott. Just finally now the Seahawks are one of those teams that it just feels like, to an extent on the football side, I don't want to say he shouldn't have been suspended because I don't know the details, but it feels like they got screwed to an extent. And the fact that it came so close to training camp after an off season. Yeah, so I'm just left with a lot of questions. Why now, after an incident that happened in 2017, at the end, the police didn't charge or didn't arrest. So he wasn't convicted. So how do they come to that? When Ian Rappaport said he had some light to shed in the incident, he just posted incredibly vague information. There was nothing clear. I know maybe that's a legal thing. I don't know, but there's nothing. All we were left with was very vague points. And just from the football perspective, we spent a lot of time talking about Gerald McCoy, Sue, why having an abundance of riches there would be really, really valuable for a team that didn't have a lot of answers. And now,
just to interject on this, Jeff, just a quick point that I forgot to mention that you were about to dive into. He lost his appeal officially today. So the NFL made this decision not
to lose his appeal. He was denied an appeal.
Oh, I thought he lost an appeal. Are you sure about that?
What I read was that his appeal request was denied.
Really?
Yeah, it's hard to tell what the wording of that meant because it could mean either of you are correct.
Yeah, I don't know that that's even the most interesting thing.
Yeah, to me,
I mean, who really cares?
No, I'm just
the same.
Really, I'm just left with questions. Why now? Why did they come up with this 6-game number? How does this impact the Jarran Reed negotiations that we were talking about last week? And on the field, how do the Seahawks get by? And Warren Sharp tweeted out their first 6 games. We're going to talk about that later when we do our prediction show. But they're facing the Saints, the Steelers, the Rams on a short week, and the Browns in the first 6 games of the season. So now a group that we talked about in depth last week is now without probably their best player, and Ziggy Ansah, when you add him to the mix, who's completely uncertain. This defense just went from, as they say, 0 to 100.
Yeah, I mean 100 to 0.
Yeah, yeah. Whatever the DEFCON 8.
You guys said a lot that I don't think I need to repeat. And definitely agree with the notion that in these situations, we're all sports fans, and what we care about in general is how it's going to affect the Seahawks and our team and those things. And I get that, and that's where we'll focus. Obviously, something happened here. There's a reason police were involved. There was a pretty good, detailed police report. And there's a saying that an old mentor of mine had at Adobe. He's a exec that had been there a long time and was at Apple before that. And anytime you'd run into somebody that it just is like, why did they do that? It just makes no sense at all. And he'd always say, don't flip the bozo bit. Don't assume that the person's an idiot on the other side. Assume that there's information you don't have and that they made a decision based on the information they had that you don't. And so I think that's pretty appropriate in this situation where, look, the easy thing to say is that the NFL is arbitrary and that they don't know what they're doing and they're all over the place. I think it's probably more likely that the NFL has information that we don't and are making decisions based on the information they have. And that could be the case both in the Tyreek Hill situation and in this situation. I don't know.
I find that hard to reason with here.
Well, say more about that.
They have a long history of making decisions without any patterns. Some of the smartest people who work for the league have been questioning on this for years, that Goodell needs to remove himself from the process, that there's no at all consistency in terms of how they view. Like there was a big incident with Josh Brown years ago before they changed their domestic violence policy. And just there's been, since really Goodell's been in charge, there's been a history of this where some of the smartest guys who work for the league, Andrew Brandt's talked about this a lot, they're lawyers, like lawyers from outside. There's been a lot of, this has been a consistent theme about the Goodell administration. And again, I don't want to say we got screwed because we didn't deserve it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I would like some uniform process and not due process, just consistent measure of what indicates a suspension and what doesn't.
Yeah, it's not that there's no chance that the NFL is doing arbitrary, silly things. I think that there's absolutely reason to believe that could be the case as well. But I think it's really dangerous to assume that we have all the information and that what we know makes this fair or unfair. So as far as whether it's fair or not, I'm just kind of like over that. Like I don't get. I definitely can say I don't understand how you have the evidence that was public about the Tyreek Hill situation and he has no suspension.
Thank you.
I don't understand that. And
well, that's kind of my point.
Right. So I'm going with I don't understand as opposed to that it's totally arbitrary.
Smarter.
There's information that we don't have potentially on the Reed side. So that said, guys, this is a big impact to how the team plays. And right now, I mean, we don't even really know what the starting four for the defensive line was going to be. Jarran Reed was the one certainty. There's questions about whether, the assumption was Puna Ford was probably going to start next to him, but it could have been Al Woods and could have been, somebody else. And then on one side, on the 5 tech, I don't think we really know. It could be Rasheem Green. It could be LJ Collier. It could be, those Quentin Jefferson potentially. And then on the other side, you hope it's Ezekiel Ansah, but if he's hurt, it could be Rasheem Green. It could be maybe Jacob Martin, but I don't know. But anyway, these are all huge questions at every position now. Like there's no position on the defensive line that who is going to be the starter when the season starts. And I guess I don't know who the obvious replacement is for Jarran Reed. There's a lot of people in chat talking about Naz Jones. And I don't know. I mean, they want Naz Jones to play 5 tech. He did play inside before, but Jarran Reed is essentially he's been a nose before, and if Puna Ford was going to start, it was going to be Jarran Reed who's going to be more of a 3 tech. But look, there's base defense. I think in nickel defense, this isn't as big of a deal. Honestly, like it is a big deal. He was a meaningful pass rusher, but there's a lot of guys: LJ Collier, Rasheem Green, Quentin Jefferson, even Naz Jones, DeMarcus Christmas. Like there's a bunch of guys that could go on the inside. I just don't know what their base defense is going to look like. And so one of my questions, there's reports that Ataba Rubin was a guy that they were sniffing around as a veteran that they could pull in. And I'm wondering if that gets more. But, if you have Ataba Rubin and Puna Ford, they can't both start. They're both essentially the same player. So I still think there is a question about who would be their other starter. And I'm guessing it's going to be Al Woods. And that is a huge drop off from Jarran Reed to Al Woods. Jeff, do you have any other thoughts there or predictions or how you see them handling it?
Yeah, just to give a little background about Woods, he's a very different player than Jarran Reed. He is a big run stuffer and almost probably a complete zero in the pass rush department. Maybe he can move the pile a bit, but he's not the kind of upfield penetrator that Jarran Reed is. He doesn't have that is just not part of his game. He's the kind of guy the Seahawks have liked historically in this defense that they can just come in, play 2 downs, eat up the run. But to go from Reed to him is just you're losing a major element of your game, the pass rush and the interior pass rush, and you don't have Frank Clark on the outside now. We all love that trade, but not having either of those guys who are 2 Pro Bowl level players and going with essentially like the 2010 version of the Seahawks defensive line in the middle, it's a hard pill to swallow for a team we thought was in like a playoff window. It's just hard to reconcile with what they look like now on a group we were very, very skeptical about last week.
Well, so Evan, here's some names. I want to look from a free agency standpoint and from a cap standpoint that are interesting. So I don't know what the situation is with Corey Legit.
They worked them out, no?
But did they?
I believe there was something with them.
He's 29. He has been a good player, and he's a decent comp for someone like Jarran Reed. He's a 2-way player, does get some push as a pass rusher. I don't know why he's not signed. Maybe it's an injury situation or something else. So, Alan Bailey's another guy from
he just signed tonight.
He just signed.
Ugh.
So to interrupt for a second, On April 17th, the Seahawks worked out legit on the same day as Al Woods. They chose to sign Al Woods.
Okay.
So that could give them the background to make a move there.
There's another name that should ring a bell. Muhammad Wilkerson is still available. He's 30 years old. Has been a difference maker at times.
I
Clint
would
McDonald, 32 years old.
I mean, they have to, right? This position group with Jarran Reed was probably still the weakest position group on the team. Would you guys disagree?
Defensive line as a whole.
Yes,
yeah.
defensive line as a whole with Jarran Reed, was that still the worst position group on the squad?
Probably. I really don't like the safeties, but yeah.
Fair, but now you take Jarran Reed away, that is one weak position group. I mean, are you relying on Rasheem Green to be an every down contributor? Like, there's going to be some opportunity here for the young guys, and I'm excited about seeing some young talent, but honestly, there's going to be a huge drop off, and I have some big picture philosophical concerns in terms of how they play football and how this is going to, affect game days, but this is a massive loss.
Yeah, so I mean, Benny Logan is another name. 29. I mean, there are some decent veterans, or at least guys that have been decent in the past, that are still out there. Legit is a guy that he at one point was a pretty good starter. Wilkerson's another guy that had a pretty good upside. Eddie
Lacy could play DT for us. Just saying, if we're getting desperate, okay, too far, Brian, too far.
Truth hurts, dude.
Is Marcus Tubbs still around?
Yeah. Well, there's a guy named Aziz Shitu, and based on this situation, he might be the perfect fit. Tom Johnson, 36-year-old Tom Johnson.
God.
You want him back?
We're so fucked.
You want to pay him again for another game? Yeah. So, guys, I mean, this is it. So it is 6 games. It is not the whole season. So that it is important to kind of get some perspective there. I do think that they're going to struggle. No, there's no doubt about it, figuring out how to replace him. But like Jarran Reed before this past season was like a 1.5 to 2 sack guy. He was a run stuffer.
But we had Bennett and Averill and Sheldon.
But no, listen. So on the inside, on the interior, they didn't have much to pair. Like it was Jarran Reed and Ataba Rubin, or Jarran Reed and Tony McDaniel. Like they had like 2 run stuffers. So they have spent time where they had 2 run stuffers on base defense, and they have multiple run stuffers. Jamie Mater is a guy I was actually interested in. I said it in the last show. I'm not inventing it for this show. They got him from Cleveland. They signed him as an early free agent. I think he's got some potential. I think him, Al Woods, and Poona Ford, those might be your 3 guys to start with, and maybe they add a 4th veteran. And then maybe like this is a big opportunity, I think, for some of the guys farther down the roster. Maybe someone surprises. Maybe DeMarcus Christmas, draft pick. Maybe he surprises. Maybe Brian Mone, the guy that's 366 pounds. Maybe he surprises like JT Tweely. I mean, it definitely creates opportunity. I also think Quentin Jefferson is a guy that has played defensive tackle. A lot of people keep talking about Naz. I think Quentin Jefferson would get snaps in defensive tackle before Naz Jones, but I'm not sure. It depends on how they want to play. So if I'm really trying to channel Pete Carroll and John Schneider and how they handle these types of situations, I think their first thing is they're going to try to roll and see who they've got and see how that plays. And they're going to want to see them the first week, and they're going to pay a lot of attention there. And 2, I think that they're going to bring in a veteran. I think they'll sign a vet. They'll try to find somebody that they can bring in and add to the competition. And their hope will be that veteran doesn't make the roster. Their hope will be that one of the younger guys steps up and that they'll start the first 6 games of the season with run stuffing interior defensive tackles without a lot of penetration. And then on nickel packages or in pass rush situations, you're going to see guys like Rasheem Green, LJ Collier, Quentin Jefferson, if he makes it, Naz Jones, potentially. Those guys could, in those situations, swim inside and add there. So I would say the biggest outcome of this is, fellas, Ezekiel Ansah's health just became that much more important. If he's out for the first 6 weeks on PUP.
And have people looked at our opponents the first 6 weeks?
You want to go through them?
Yeah, I have them up right here. First week, home against the Bengals. I don't think that's a huge challenge. Second week, probably the best offensive line in the NFL, the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Week 3, the Saints. Another good offensive line. Week 4, Arizona Cardinals. Not a good offensive line. Week 5, the Rams. And then week 6, the Browns. So 3 out of those 6 teams probably have top 5 offensive line units.
How many of those games are at home?
That is a great question. It is.
I think it's 3.
It is 3. Yeah.
Look, I mean, the Seahawks at home. What is that? What else does this do? It shifts even more pressure to the Seahawks offense.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson, that offense, they have to be great. They can't be like searching for themselves and just be okay. They've got to be absolutely a top 5 scoring offense right out of the gates. And that was not the way they started last year. They started with 2 total mistake games. And I know Run Analytics says it's because of the defenses they've played. I think it was other reasons. But in any event, they found themselves, and they're gonna have to start better this year. They just are gonna have to start better, and they have to win that first game against the Bengals, like at all costs. That's a huge game. So, look, I think your goal in this situation is to get out of those first 6 games 3-3.
And even when you look at the Browns, they're not a gimme in week 6.
Oh, no, not at all.
They are not. Do not look at, like, Seahawks fans, do not look at week 6 and be like, oh, easy win against the Browns is that at home? No, that's actually in Cleveland.
That's in Cleveland.
That is not an easy win. That is not an easy win.
Oh, no. With Beckham and Landry and Baker against our corners and pass rush, that's a scary matchup, man.
Yeah.
Well,
there could also be a trade.
Oh, if John Schneider makes another like Sheldon. Oh, John, don't even think about it. If you're listening, I will personally. I'm not going to finish that sentence, but don't make a trade, a bad trade, John Schneider, please.
Yeah, don't make the Sheldon Richardson trade. Come up with the Kelly Jennings for Clinton McDonald trade.
Say it like he has some choice that he knows how to handle that situation.
Yeah, trade Jamar Taylor for a starting player. Come on.
So I am going to do a quick look here on 4-3 defensive tackles.
They like trading with New England.
And let's look at 2019. Kawan Short. Is he? I don't know where he is on his contract. I mean, Geno Atkins, Kawan Short. These are guys at the top of the.
But this is the reality. You don't make a trade for a 6-game suspension. You know what I mean? Like if he's out all year, maybe. But and really, when John Schneider and Pete Carroll look in the mirror, is this team like a Super Bowl contender?
No,
they're not.
They can't be yet.
Exactly. And you don't make a desperate trade like this, or even really a trade to give up a lot of draft capital.
Oh, that's why I said a low end.
Yeah, no, I just don't even think it makes sense. Just roll with the younger guys, see what you get out of them. And like Brian said, hope you come out 3-3 out of that 6-game stretch.
Yeah, realistically, the way they look at this internally, just from dealing with the football teams, they just look at this as like an injury. Like anyone could get injured in training camp. There's been that Percy Harvin where everyone was going crazy when he showed up first day on PUP. That's the way they view it. What you're saying, Evan, is probably correct. Like they look at this as he could tweak something, be out 6 weeks. Now the preseason gets a lot more interesting.
You know, the trade piece, I don't think it's likely they're going to go get a big name.
Yeah, that's
for
what
the
I'm
reasons
saying.
you guys mentioned. But John Schneider's made trades at the end of preseason pretty much every year, and a lot of those have been his better moves. Justin Coleman was a great example. Got him from the Patriots for next to nothing, and that's worked out really well. He's done that a few times, and I think that there's reason to believe that there'll be a defensive tackle out there that's on the edge of someone's roster. We should be looking at teams that have great defensive lines and are stacked. And the likelihood that someone good is going to try to get stashed on their practice squad and gets cut, that's where you look. And that's where John Schneider will look. And I think that does seem like a likely scenario that we'd see something like that happen. But I do have to, I've been relatively not critical during the show, but guys, how many times did I bring up during the offseason that they were so close to just finishing a great offseason? They need to do one more thing. What was the one thing I said that they should do?
I don't remember.
Does anybody on this show listen to me?
Sometimes.
How many times? You and I talked about it multiple times.
Yeah. We talked about Gerald McCoy so many times. He seemed to fit so perfectly. We talked about Sue during our free agency shows.
Those are the two.
Sue went to Tampa. That team's going nowhere.
And he got $9 million.
Yeah.
For a 1-year deal. And guys, we absolutely had that cap space to spend. And instead of having that peace of mind, and by the way, not only did I think that they should do that regardless, like without knowing, they knew this was going on at that point. The team was aware that this was a possibility, and they did not sign another defensive tackle. Like, what the hell?
And to follow up on my previous note, Brian, he actually did appeal, and he was denied. So the team so this has been an ongoing process for at least several weeks, with the team probably knowing months ago.
The team has known for years, because it was a 2017 incident, and for them to be aware that this could happen and to not sign a veteran defensive lineman during free agency when they had the cap space, honestly, that is a really, really questionable decision. I could go further than that, but I'll stick with that. It is worth some real criticism for them to not have put more thought into that. And now, on the flip side, you have to think, if they knew this was a possibility and they didn't sign a free agent defensive tackle when there were good ones available, even late in free agency after the draft, Sue didn't sign till late. McCoy didn't sign till late. That means that they're planning to roll with what they've got. That's what it looks like. And if now all of a sudden now they're going to get super active and do something crazy, that would be really boneheaded. That would be really bad. So, it's
watching the secondary work with minimal pass rush is going to be an interesting thing to watch this year.
So here's a question for you guys. With the way they want to play, run the ball, control the clock, limit chances, how do you play with a defense potentially this bad? How do you play that style?
Well, one, I think they're definitely going to continue. Anybody that was hoping, me being one of them, that they were going to maybe open up the offense a little bit more, this is a reason why they could probably get even farther into their shell and be really conservative. I think that it also, I was actually thinking about writing an article on this today, and I just didn't get a chance, but I think that cornerback group could be one of the most important groups in the whole roster. I think it's realistic. It's not just that you hope. I think it's realistic to expect Shaquille Griffin and Trey Flowers to be meaningfully better than they were last year. And if that's the case, that's a big deal. There's actually a lot of mounting evidence that coverage is more important than pass rush. And so if you're able to cover better than they were, and they were not good at coverage last year, if they're able to cover better, that realistically could happen. And if that happens, then the defense could get better. If the safety position, if they get a better safety in there than Tedrick Thompson, Bradley McDougall's already Pro Bowl level safety. If they get another safety that's better than Tedrick Thompson, that's another chance for coverage and secondary to be better. The linebacker group is the best group on the roster. So you're going to have 3 really talented, really fast players who also all excel in coverage. So you could be setting up for a really excellent coverage team. That would be the hope. And the defensive line really needs to stop the run, get teams into obvious passing situations. And then we've already talked about they have some options when they get into pass rush in obvious passing situations. I think that the real challenge here is in their base defense, where you want to be able to have a little pass rush and a little bit of run stuffing. They don't have as many of those guys. Like, there's not as many two-way. I don't think they have any of those guys on the interior without Jarran Reed.
Man, Nathan would have loved to hear you say that coverage over pass rush thing.
Well, I only say it when he's not around.
Yeah, well, we won't tell him.
Yeah. Well, see, here's the difference is some of us actually listen and are eager to learn all that stuff, but we don't like lord it over people like somehow we're, on Mount Olympus for having learned or read those things.
Hold on. There's not one way to do things?
Yeah.
Actually, the world is black and white.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Fair.
Yeah. So look, that's where I see it, fellas. I mean, what other angles should we cover before we wrap this thing up?
I guess the extension. Like, does this change?
Good point.
Yeah, like where does this leave him with the organization? What's his negotiating power?
You can't tell me. So one thing that you can't change about this situation is that in the NFL's eyes, he has 1 strike against him. Okay. So that's not changing. If he gets a second strike, isn't that like a 12-game suspension and then third strike? I don't point being, it gets like exponentially worse. And he already has 1 strike against the personal conduct policy on his career with the NFL. That's a huge deal. I was personally very much looking forward towards a reasonable extension with him, just because I think he was a leadership piece on this team, especially on the defense.
Wait, dude. Last week, like a few days ago, you were like team trade Jarran Reed. You were not looking
for the right price. For the right price. For the right price.
Dude,
I had an out, Brian. I had an out if you listened.
Oh my gosh. All right.
Opinions are fluid.
Yeah, no, they do change, but honestly, this thing jeopardizes everything. Like I don't know if you let him walk after a tag, you tag and trade him. It'd be nice to get some sort of value better than a 3rd round comp pick when he leaves.
Jeff, I don't know, but the first thing I said, I was so when I was at the golf place, I was talking to the guys and like, hey, you guys Seahawks fans? And they're like, yeah. And I said, did you hear the news? And they're like, oh God. I broke it to them. And I was like, the only good potential upside here is maybe the Seahawks are able to sign him at a more reasonable deal than they were before. As I think about it, there's no reason for Jarran Reed and his side to want to sign an extension right now. So I think the chances of him being extended prior to the season are 0, very close to 0. And he will want to be on the field and be able to prove his value before he even enters into that. And I think the likelihood that he's going to want to sign an extension during the season is probably pretty low. It's also pretty low likelihood that he's going to be able to do enough this year to warrant a really big deal. So the way I look at it is I think this really increases the likelihood of the Seahawks re-signing Jarran Reed next year for a 1-year deal.
Interesting
point.
I think he will want a prove-it deal that gets him back out on the back out in free agency, and maybe they'll have like a player option part of the deal or something. But that would be my guess. The team wants him here, I think. I just think that the price was going to be exorbitant, and I think they're going to get him on a reasonable deal next year.
Yeah, it could be. That's kind of what they were hoping with Frank Clark. Then the price just got out of control, and then it doesn't seem like.
All I see is an opportunity for Jermaine Ifedi to get $17 million a year.
Oh my God. Okay, who wants the optimistic retake?
I'm petrified that they will extend him. I'm absolutely petrified.
Well, there were a couple of calls in the chat for Schneider to flip Jermaine Ifedi and get a defensive tackle for him. And
I mean, I'll take an In-N-Out burger in compensation. Like,
there you go, George.
Like,
fan.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
let me be really clear. I'm glad you're not our GM for many reasons.
I'd make great decisions. First of all, I would not let Earl Thomas walk without getting any value. Sorry, wouldn't. I'd be an asshole.
Okay, maybe we want him as GM.
We got a 3rd round pick. So I do want to take. Well, sorry, no, I'll do this at the end. But Jeff, I mean, is there any reason to think that Jarran Reed's going to sign a contract before the end of the season?
Probably not. Probably not. There's so much dependent now on his performance and how he responds in the locker room, what his leadership's like. It's going to be interesting. You're getting him angry and you're getting him fresh, which is kind of could work in a positive if they can tread water. 3-3 is a good example. The Seahawks never start out well. Even the Super Bowl years, things got a little sketchy up first. So really, if he plays out of his mind in the final 10 games, maybe in December, but realistically, the answer is no.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things I had said about why I was so pro signing Reed to an extension, even at the numbers that we were talking about, is he'd done everything right. He had stayed healthy. He had been a run stuffer the way he was supposed to be. He had become a pass rusher. He had improved every season. He had been a locker room leader. I mean, he checked all the boxes. This is a pretty big red flag. Not only the fact that he's suspended for 6 games, but this is a pretty bad situation off the field. You know, whatever went on there. I mean, if you put your hands on another human being, let alone someone who's far weaker than you are, that's a big deal. And you know, look, when Frank Clark was drafted, everybody was very up in arms about the Seahawks doing that. And John Schneider was very clear about that. If there's ever any evidence of a player putting their hands on a woman, that he would not have them on the team. And they said they did research on Frank Clark. They believe that you know, they got sufficient evidence that the situation wasn't what was reported. And Frank Clark, as far as we know, had been essentially a model citizen, so to speak, since he was drafted. Now you got Jarran Reed, who maybe hasn't been. And what does that mean? Is there a chance that we're all talking about extending him? Maybe the Seahawks, the reason they haven't extended him this far is because they're not planning to. If their evidence is that this is what they think happened, they're not going to cut him, but maybe they're going to let him play out his year and let him walk. And if that's the case, God, this is a triple kick in the ass, because not only do you not get him and you don't get to keep that kind of talent, but you're not going to get good comp in return. Even he's not going to sign a huge deal next year. So you're not going to get a 3rd round comp pick or anything like that. So yeah, it is a kick in the crotchal region for Seahawks fans. And there's no other way around it. So, fellas, I cannot wait to get back. I can't honestly wait to go to fish, but I cannot wait to get back and start telling you what I'm seeing on the field and starting to get some some real information to involved in these conversations about what we're seeing out there. And then it's going to be a really interesting camp. There's a lot of open questions and a lot of opportunity for new faces to step forward. I do want to take a second as we close out the show. Huge shout out to Derek G and Harrison Seitz. Both became patrons during the show. Really, really, really appreciate that, guys. Super, super helpful. We might even find out a way to have sound without echo in our next show with your help and your contributions. So thank you. For folks that haven't already, please head over to Patreon, patreon.com/hawkblogger. If you didn't hear at the beginning, we will no longer be able to use Hangouts. Google is getting rid of it and they're not replacing it. And we're having to spend a decent chunk of change to find an adequate replacement. We're also getting more shows and more content that we're creating. There's going to be a post-game reaction show that Evan's going to start and we're going to do. Cable Thanos has got great stuff planned for the year. Will Cornell, Rain City Series, has got some good stuff. They're also helping with production and editing and all that kind of stuff that also costs. So really, really, really would appreciate you guys supporting the show. We will continue to give to charity, but we also need to invest in the show and get you guys better content and just have more fun. So head on over to patreon.com/hawkblogger, join the crew, and we promise to make that a wise investment for you. We're going to make it fun and really find more and more ways to make the Patreon experience great. So guys, try to get some sleep. Take a swig of your favorite thing or a hit of your favorite thing or whatever it is you do and get some sleep. Sun will rise tomorrow. We will find somebody to be excited about soon enough. DK Metcalf, maybe he can slide over. He's pretty strong. Maybe he can be a defensive tackle for us.
Go get a burger.
Something will work out. Go get a burger.
Burger Master on the east side. Go get Burger Master.
Yes. Oh, of course. Why are you not already at Burger Master? And then go over to manifestfit.com and get in shape. And then buy a new house in Pierce, South King, or Thurston County at Altitude Homes. 3 of our sponsors. So all those things are great and they're available for you. So take care, everybody. Love you all and peace out. Go Hawks.